All right, Sistas fans. Now I have to say, both episodes are great. I'm talking about Sistas and the Oval. I honestly feel like this was the best episode of Sistas. How do I know? The way I usually judge these episodes is not just how engaged I am when I'm watching, but also based on the notes I took. But for Sistas, we're looking at a full page of notes. Full page of notes, not even half. Usually, there's barely anything to talk about, but I feel like this episode gave almost just about everyone something to do. So we pretty much pick up where we left off for the most part, where Aaron and Karen are eating ice cream, in her car. They're just talking about life and whatnot. Aaron's 37, and I believe it was said in episode 1 that Karen is 36. And, Karen hits him below the belt, mentioning the fact his wife cheated on him. And she's like, hey, aren't you going to ask for my phone number? He's like, I don't think I want it. But then after he leaves and, she gets back in the car, I think she notices a rose that was on the floor of the seat he was in. And it had like a little sticky note attached. So I'm going to assume that had like his, phone number and contact info on there. Afterwards, we see Danny calling Sabrina about the fact that she saw Gary and another woman at the airport terminal, and Sabrina gets Karen, then Karen gets Andy, and they're on a four-way call. But then after hearing a description of what the woman looks like, Andy's like, nope, that's his wife. Don't even bother, engaging with him. Honestly, at first, I didn't think that was Jasmine. I know at the end of the last episode, I thought it was Jasmine based off the glimpse of the skin complexion. But I was thinking that maybe it's another woman who looks like Jasmine, kind of showing that Gary definitely has a specific type of woman he's going after. But then also it's like, it felt like, okay, what if this woman wasn't Jasmine? And then Andy was like, don't engage because, she thought that it was Jasmine simply based off the description. But let me know if I'm wrong. I did watch the opening scene a couple of times, and I don't believe they ever showed the woman's full face, just her hair and everything else. So then after that, Calvin calls Sabrina, and she ignores it. And then we have Sabrina and Danny waiting at Danny's house in order to have, Karen and Andy come over because those two were not aware that, Andy was messing around with a married man. But then the other two girls show up, and, Sabrina and Danny are upset about being kept out of the loop, despite the fact that, Sabrina kept it under wraps that Danny was messing around with a married man not too long ago herself. So then after that, Andy immediately asks for a joint. They get high and they're having a good time. And, Andy's talking about how the fact that Gary's all she ever wanted, and her friends talk about the whole divorce factor because of the fact that, Andy feels that she knows the divorce is happening, basically, without saying the whole Jasmine situation about, hey, his wife came looking to me for help about getting a divorce. But Danny breaks it down saying just based off the way those two were at the airport together, that doesn't look like a man or a woman who's looking for a divorce. So, Andy doesn't know what to say to that. So Andy and Karen leave. They're having a discussion. And I like this part because Karen pretty much squashes any kind of paranoia that Andy may have gotten. And I mentioned this in the last episode where it seemed like Andy may have been getting seeds of paranoia based off what Karen was saying in regards to Jasmine possibly playing her, already knowing about the affair, it being Andy, and then going to her directly for help. But let's see. After that, they're just talking about, the whole Zach situation as well. They're just tired of, dealing with these clowns that call themselves men and just tired of being played. And, Andy's like, you know what? I think I'm done. I'm done. And then we have Danny and Sabrina talking briefly. And she's ignoring another call from Calvin while Danny pulls out her laptop, trying to look him up online. Then Sabrina accidentally, answers the phone and basically, repeatedly blows him off. But he knows he's getting played and hangs up on her. And then Danny's going to, stay up and, look up some intel, even though she has to get up in a few hours. But she's going to do it for a friend. And I'll talk about Danny a little towards the end of the episode because this was probably the best Danny episode in terms of, episode 3 of Sistas. This episode was definitely the best to show her have more character. Then we have Gary coming over to Andy's house, and she loses it. She is done with him, just done. This scene, wow, this is probably going to get its own video, but this is just goes to show, how men in general, how sometimes we just do dumb stuff. And not just, men, but women. Everybody has the whole manipulation down, both sides of the spectrum, men and women. But at the same time, I'm glad Andy called out Gary for his crap, because not only is it like he is understandably confused because it's like, everything's cool, but then all of a sudden you're going to lash out because remember, Andy isn't talking about the whole, hey, your wife came down to my law firm looking for a divorce. She's basically grilling him like, why did you pick me? Is it because we go to the same gym? And just basically asking, what was that song by 50 Cent? Girl, would you love me if I was down and out? Would you still act out for me? Look, I just ate some ice cream, so my voice isn't 100%. Not that I can sing well anyway, but I know that music video had 50 Cent and Megan Good. I think ask them 21 questions, and they're all about us. I hope I don't get copyright for that. At least I don't think so. But in any case, bad singing aside, yeah. So Gary's like, what's going on? So then, Andy's like, you know what? If you really love me, if you really want to be there for me, like you think, if you want to give me more, which I deserve more than just being like, a secondhand whore in the middle of the night when your wife, has her head turned. He's like, you know what? If you want me to, I'll go back home. I'll tell my wife I'm leaving her. I'll pack my bags and bring them over here if that's what you want. And then she's like, do it. And then he's like, well, my son's autistic and I can't do it. I'm like, dude, what you bring it up for? Was that a bluff? Was he just bluffing, saying that, hey, I'm going to lay it all on the line for you right now, baby. I'll do it. Well, go do it. Well, see the way my bank account's set up. So I'm just like, why are you going to pull that out of your ass, Gary? Speaking of ass pulling, he goes ahead and pulls out a ring. And at first I'm like, okay, well, where's this going? Where are we going with this? Episode 1, you're pulling out a cupcake, and then at the end you're bringing her flowers for her birthday. Now you're pulling out a ring. What's going on here? I mean, the only thing he's been pulling out of his pockets or ass have been excuses. Dang, man, I don't even know whose side I'm on. But in any case, she's like, take that ring and shove it and get out. So that was the end of that. And not even that, then he's going to try to flip it on her. Like, wait, are you seeing somebody else? It's like, what's going on? I'm like for real? Like the guy who's literally cheating on his wife is asking the mistress if she's seeing anyone else. And I'm just, wait, what? What's going on here? So in any case, she rightfully kicks him out. And then that's the end of that. Karen calls, but Andy shuts it down quick. Like, hey girl, this is not a good time. So then we go back to the bank, and Maurice is the MVP of this show. Like, this dude, he a damn fool. So basically, Sabrina's in her feelings about the whole Calvin situation, and it's getting on Maurice's case. And, Calvin, lets the guy in front of him so he can go to Sabrina. And, Calvin just goes to Maurice. And, he's making a deposit or whatever. And then him and Maurice get to talking. It's like, hey, remembering my name is good enough for now. It's like, hey, you know what? Here's my phone number. You want to go out for coffee? And then he walks out. And here's the part that semi-confused me. Now, Maurice and Sabrina are like literally right next to each other. Obviously different windows, but they're right beside each other. Now, the camera kept, what's it called? Panning or switching angles where you have Maurice and Calvin talking. But then you also have Sabrina, her reaction to it. But it seems like I don't think the camera showed this, but during the moments where Calvin and Maurice were talking, he gave the number and everything. Was Sabrina preoccupied helping the customer that Calvin let in front of him? Because when it was all said and done, Maurice is like, child, he just asked me out for some coffee. Like, I can't really do a feminine voice like that, so I'm not even going to try. I just thought it was funny the way he worded it to Sabrina, and she's in her feelings about it. And, yeah, honestly, I just don't get it. I'm like, did she not overhear it? Was she purposely not trying to pay attention? That's not going to take away points for the episode. It's just something that kind of baffled me. But, let me know in the comments if anybody else got that vibe. That was just me. But she goes to, I think, like her office or whatever, calls Danny about the fact that Calvin just came in here and asked Maurice out. And then Danny just lost it. It was hilarious. So after that, we have Zach. We're over there. It's like cart coming through. So he has these fine three Caucasian. Y'all know I love white chocolate. Basically, they're going on like a first class trip to, one of the girls got their dad's yacht for the weekend, and they want Zach to come, and Danny pretty much shuts it down. But hey, Zach, he was holding his own. I'm not gonna like throw him under the cart like that. No pun intended. But Danny purposely, canceled their reservations and all that stuff, and then they decide it's like, that's okay. I'll take my daddy's plane or jet down there, so don't even worry about it. And it's like, well, and I'm not really taking sides here, but Karen says she's done with Zach, and Zach is trying to do his own thing as well. So it is what it is. But to be honest, in the midst of the Me Too Times Up thing / Get Out period we're in right now, I think Danny may have helped Zach out, even though he doesn't know it. But to be fair, Zach wasn't like, oh, I'll go, and like, no. Or he could have been playing a game. I don't know. I haven't had a situation like, where a group of girls willingly were throwing themselves at me. So honestly, I can't say how you should react in that situation, because I have never been in that situation. So after that, we get Calvin and Maurice getting coffee, and basically, Calvin shuts down any kind of confusion by his invitation to Maurice. He wants, it's like, he rightfully assuming, they're, good friends, given the fact he comes in there so often and he sees the two interact. So it's like, maybe you can help me out with Sabrina, to get her to love me and everything. So, and Calvin, and this is what I liked about this episode, and I'll talk more about this in the Oval when it comes to character. We're getting intel about Calvin and the fact that he's not gay. He's into women, but he grew up with two fathers. And that's an insight that not a lot of people have. Honestly, to my knowledge anyway, growing up in public school, elementary, middle school, high school, and college, it's like, we really don't even talk about that kind of stuff. But then again, I was at Liberty. So if there were people with two parents of the same gender, I honestly wouldn't know. So I think what Tyler Perry did with his storyline, and I know we're only 3 episodes in, is actually pretty good. It goes along with you really shouldn't judge a book by its cover just because Calvin is, well, as he confirmed in this episode, heterosexual. He sees people as people, but then you also have to think that, oh, is he a bit feminine? Maybe it comes from having two fathers, but that doesn't make him gay. Kudos, Tyler Perry. I did not see that twist coming. So after that, they agree to help each other out with that. So that's pretty good. And again, Maurice, he's a gem in this show. Then we get to the final scene. Oh, wow. I'm actually running through this. And guys, literally, I'm not like rushing through it. I'm just surprised I got to the end of it so quick. I think it's because the Greenleaf review was actually pretty lengthy yesterday. I did. But Andy and her boss have a conversation. Her boss assumed that things went smoothly with Jasmine despite the conflict of interest. But Jasmine surprises Andy by showing up and, well, thanking her because their conversations have been a bit therapeutic. The fact that, nobody is really... She doesn't really have anyone to talk about these kind of things with. And heck, even all of her other rich friends are pretty much, happy that she was going through with a divorce. But I mean, what is it? Unhappy people welcome company, as in, if somebody's feeling bad, they're glad when somebody else is feeling bad too. And the fact that they would rather quit their marriages, get a divorce, and take money as opposed to staying and fighting for their marriage probably says a lot about that side of the spectrum, if you will. But she's going to stay for a marriage. She's going to fight for a marriage. And, she talks about how her husband came back to their house that morning and was in tears, saying that he's sorry for everything and wants to work things out and make things better. And then flashes the new ring, which he pulled out for Andy, which is like, what? And that's the cliffhanger. So there are a lot of things to talk about. Overall, pretty solid episode. I'm confident when I say this episode deserves an 8.5 out of 10. I think I enjoyed it from start to finish. I'm really enjoying Sistas, y'all. I honestly didn't think I'll be enjoying it as much as I am. But I think what really made this episode stand out was all the characters definitely had their share of the screen time. Just getting character dynamics. Like, it was funny, seeing them, smoke a joint and everything. But I just love those scenes where they're all together. And it isn't necessarily all drama. They're having fun, but also discussing what's going on in their lives. The whole Calvin bit, I just talked about that a couple minutes ago. I like how Tyler Perry is expanding on the fact that, heterosexual men can, what's it called? be in touch with their feminine. The only time I remotely remember that being brought up is what was that movie back? It was 90. Father of the Bride, when Martin Short was like the wedding coordinator, and they didn't use the word homosexual or gay, but they just talked about, yeah, he's a male, but you know, he has a, what's that show? What's that show called? Queer Eye? Well, no, didn't Melissa say this to Jeffrey and have not when she saw the apartment? He's like, ooh, queer eye for a straight guy or something like that. Well, basically, a heterosexual man who's in touch with their feminine side and, you know, gets along with people and sees people for who they are. That's a good story. Danny, I just like the fact that, yes, she is the wild comedic person of the group, but what I liked about this episode is the fact that we really see more of her nurturing side. And my favorite Danny moment was when she was like, you know, hey, when somebody's like, no, you don't have to look into Calvin, I know you got to go to work in a few hours, I know, but I want to do it. So it's just those moments like that where it isn't about the laughs and, you know, the wild craziness, when Danny's being, you know, Danny, and definitely understands why she's part of this friend group, because she's there for her sisters, which I like that a lot. Speaking of Andy and Jasmine, one thing I really liked, and I don't know if I was the only one to catch this, but when Andy went out there to get Jasmine and they were both walking back to the office, was it just me, or did it look like they were wearing similar clothing? Like their shoes looked very alike, and it looked like they were wearing both wearing white, but I think Jasmine's, you know, like outer clothing was white and her shirt was like a light pink, and I think Andy was wearing like a light blue or something like that. They really look the same, and I'm just like, is this symbolism, especially when she flashed the ring, because Jasmine's pretty much showing off what Andy would have had, you know, air quotes, if she would have accepted that ring. So it's almost like, you know, Gary, without knowing it, is sending the message to Andy, yeah, girl, you could have had all this, but you just threw me out. And at first, when Jasmine showed up and, you know, she was talking to Andy almost like, you know, she was about to, you know, bust her right there in the office. Like, hey, I know it's you, whore. That's what I thought was going on. But she even said, you know, the private investigator, I honestly don't even think there's a mistress. No, I don't think so. And a woman with no soul, isn't that just a monster who would destroy marriage like that? I don't know anyone who would do that kind of thing, right? And let's see, no proof of mistress, they'll fight for the marriage, no divorce. Yeah, I think it was a pretty solid episode. I loved it. I can't wait to see what next week brings. And it looks like we're going to have another great Danny moment as she offers Zach a place to stay to split the rent. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, you know, the Sabrina thing, I can't wait to see what's going to happen with that. Maurice, definitely good for laughs. And yeah, I think it was a pretty solid episode. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. How did you enjoy episode 3 of Sistas? All right, yeah, the title of the episode, A Woman with No Soul. And I think I'll probably do a Gary video next. It's like, do you think he's just patching things up with Jasmine because he's trying to get back at Andy, or do you think he's being genuine about it? I think it was definitely an asshole move to just say, oh, I'll leave her right now. But then it's like, you got to bring up your children, specifically your what was it, the your autistic child, to use that as a weapon. And that brings a good point. Andy is like, you know, he literally just said, you know, hey, I'll leave my wife and everything. And it's like, well, he freaks out if I'm gone for like what is it, like 30 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever. So Andy, how do you think this is going to work out if he does leave his wife and be with you? Like, well, what exactly do you think is going to go on? So I don't know. It just seems like Gary is one of the many men who make more excuses than they make for an effort. Just my 2 cents. But yeah, 8.5 out of 10. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you all in the next video.